Welcome back to the Reier on YouTube channel, where it is time once again for No Sleep Teal, a show dedicated to discussion about the NFL's Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Reier back with you alongside my great host here, Mr. Evan Reier. It is the Monday after Super Bowl 59. No three-peat for Patrick Mahomes, Ev, and those KC Chiefs. Jalen Hurts and those lines of scrimmage specifically for the Philadelphia Eagles. Just too much over in NOLA. And as it is, Philly exploded last night, almost literally, I think.
Oh yeah. No, that was the joke, right? Was that whether the Eagles win or lose that game, Philadelphia will be on fire by the end of the night. And I mean, maybe in the way that they did it, it's kind of one of those where it's when you kind of dominate, by the end of the game, of course you're still going to celebrate, but it's not like, a walk-off win or something like that where it's, oh my gosh, whatever. It's like, dang, like I mean, of course, it's the Chiefs. I'm sure Eagles fans were nervous even when they were up 34-0, 27-0, or whatever. But I mean, it wasn't close. I mean, it was just a
No.
complete manhandling, really from start to finish. I was extremely impressed by like you said, the lines of scrimmage, especially. I mean, just the way that the Chiefs' offensive line got whipped in that game was even beyond what I expected.
Boy, that Chiefs offensive line, you said it, just had its struggles from start to finish. And Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he's a wizard, but it just goes to show you still have to be able to hang in just a little bit to
Yeah.
help a guy like Patrick Mahomes up front. And the Chiefs couldn't even do that. And
No.
really, when it got to 10-0, that's the first time I've had a feeling about a Chiefs team, probably going back to, say, Alex Smith at quarterback, that this game might be over,
Yeah.
because you could see it plain as day that Philly defensively was just going to have its way with that
Yeah.
Chiefs offensive line. And so I'm not one of these people, though. I want to get your thoughts on that. I'm not one of these people. That's it. Dynasty's over. Chiefs done.
Right.
That's it. Blow up the Chiefs. As long as 15 is still on that roster, I'm never going to do that. But is Travis Kelsey done? I think there are some fair questions that we can ask about this Chiefs team in terms of its stranglehold, at least on the AFC.
Yeah, I think that this is gonna be, if we had to compare it to the last great dynasty in the NFL, the Patriots, right? This might be where they have to pivot their identity a little bit, which the Patriots did. The Patriots were really run first and always were a run focused team. But those last two or three Super Bowls, I mean, that became Brady really, just becoming
Hmm.
an absolute like center point of everything they were doing. Really, I feel like, it'd be the reverse with the Chiefs where Patrick Mahomes was the center point. Maybe they have to figure out a way to diversify off of that because they can't run the ball right now. They haven't really been able to do it all season. And while they've got some really interesting pieces on, in that receiver group, they don't the reason why when it was 10-0, I was having concerns for them was the dynamicism or the lack
Yeah.
thereof. I mean, Xavier Worthy's fast, but he's
No.
not a great route runner.
He's still kind of a complimentary guy.
Yeah, he's not
And
a dude that you
he
can
didn't have
just
Rice available, so that,
yeah.
hurt him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Hollywood Brown is a step, below of what, maybe we thought he could be when he first entered the NFL. Travis Kelsey's no longer in his prime.
No.
They didn't have the dynamicism with their offensive weapons to really say, to get back in that game. I mean, Patrick Mahomes can throw a bunch of really cool balls for 15 yards, but eventually you got to hit a big shot. And they weren't really able to do that until the game was over. Yeah, I think that's going to be a question of do the how do the Chiefs kind of reinvent themselves because I think they do have to pivot. But with our Alabama background, how many times do we see the Bama dynasty is over and then psych it wasn't? So I definitely won't be counting out the Chiefs next year going into the future. But yeah, I think they're going to need they really just need a number one offensive
They
weapon,
do.
a, a,
Well, and that's
a
kind of
standalone
maybe the
guy.
problem for the Chiefs a little bit, is that it felt like they had pivoted with this team,
Yeah,
because defensively they were so good. They had
Yeah.
become so good on that side of the football that they weren't as dependent on Mahomes and the magic on a week in and week out basis. But I think the Eagles showed you last night, if anything, the Chiefs might have to revert back to
Yeah.
really leaning heavily on Patrick Mahomes and helping him here in the offseason with some additional pieces, maybe more so on that offensive line. They feel like they're a little bit stuck with a guy like Jawan Taylor, though,
Yeah, they're
in
locked
terms
in.
of what they owe him moving forward. I mean, I guess he's been somewhat serviceable after coming in from the Jacksonville Jaguars, but he hasn't been what I would call all pro sort of good at that one tackle spot. They've got some things to address. There's no doubt about it. What worries you about Jawan Taylor is you have an injury at left tackle like the Chiefs had, and you don't feel good about moving him over there.
Yeah.
Instead, you kick out a guard.
No, I mean
That's a little bit problematic.
that's a vote of no confidence for sure. I mean, that's it's pretty, I mean, rare to ever see that happen in the NFL. I mean, you almost always just flip that tackle, but yeah, they're going to be, they're going to be in that spot, but at the same time when you're a top dog like that, we talk about this sometimes with free agency and the Jaguars and stuff. You have to be able to recruit, these
Mhm.
guys. They're not, they have a great selling point for anybody that they think can,
True.
help, whether it's a trade or free agency. But at the same time, as good as the Chiefs can still be and whatever. I am also thinking about the fact that the NFC. I'm wondering if it's a steel sharpened steel situation. That the NFC felt like such a stronger conference overall, and I'm wondering if the Eagles having to go through that, if the other teams that are having to go through that, whoever wants to come out of the Super Bowl in the next few years. I mean, those teams are in dog fights.
Yeah.
So I could see a situation in which the Chiefs can definitely return, but I mean, whoever comes out of the NFC over the next few years, I feel like it's going to be really, really tough.
Well,
And I think it could.
What if you're a Bills fan and you haven't gotten over that hump in the
I mean,
AFC and you
you know
see the
what's worse
Chiefs
than
get
when
just ripped by
you know what's
the
worse than
NFC representative?
losing four Super Bowls. I mean, no, losing four Super Bowls in a row is definitely worse. But I mean, the Bills, it's that ceiling right now at the AFC Championship seems
Yeah.
insurmountable. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like they can get over that hump. And yeah, I don't know what they do either. I mean, they kind of are in a similar position too, where it's like we got to do something different because it's not working. Like it's not getting us to the ultimate height. But I think with the Bills, it's a defensive issue. It's not so much an offensive issue. Um, I will say that I am stoked for Jalen Hurts. I mean, this is,
Yeah.
definitely, for a guy who has plenty of accolades in his career and plenty of high moments. This is a clear cut Jalen Hurts moment. This is his moment, and that's really awesome to see. You kind of think the same thing for Nick Sirianni. I don't really
Mhm.
like Nick Sirianni, but this kind of answers all those questions about being a fraud coach. What can is he actually able to do it? No, he's able to do that. And of course, Saquon Barkley, a guy who, in the modern NFL with how short running back like life careers can be, this was, maybe the moment, the chance. And Saquon was able to get it done,
Yes, he
albeit
was.
not really. I mean, Saquon had a decent game, but the Chiefs shut him down. It was Jalen making moves,
But
finding.
I think that underscored the value of Saquon at the same time, though, because
Yeah,
the Chiefs were intent
yeah,
on dealing with number
oh yeah,
26, and I think maybe to a fault at times, but that's kind of the way you gotta play it with that
yeah,
guy in that run game, because if you don't, you gotta kinda sorta pick your poison. So, I think he still had a lot of value in the game, although
absolutely,
statistically, you're right, it didn't show up so much in the old box score. Couple things. Sirianni, yeah, the guy has caught it left and right here in the last couple of years. But Vic Fangio coming in as the defensive coordinator, and another guy who has never gotten enough credit, Jeff Stoutland, the offensive coordinator for the
yeah,
Philadelphia Eagles, is the real deal. He's an old timer, been around a long time. You want to talk about repeats and things like that. Nick Saban at Alabama repeated once as national champion.
yeah.
2011, 2012,
2012.
offensive line coach for those Alabama teams,
Jeff
Jeff
Stoutland.
Stoutland. He
That's
is the dude when it comes to coaching up some OL. So what we're going to do coming up a little bit later in the program, Ev, is we're going to circle back to the Eagles and talk about maybe this blueprint for teams moving forward and see how applicable it might be for the Jacksonville Jaguars. By the way, it's a lot of fun, right? We talk Jacksonville Jaguars and we're talking about shortcomings for teams that are actually in
Yeah,
contention.
yeah.
Those teams, they got
Yeah, I
problems,
don't know what
pal.
they're doing. I'm glad we've got good heads on our shoulders in Duval County.
Yeah, we're way ahead of those teams.
Yeah.
But look, I think the Jags that came out today, maybe one of the gambling institutions came out with the early odds for next year's Super Bowl champs. I think the Jags are 10,000 to 1.
Throw it
So
on. Let it
hey,
ride. Let it ride. Do not do the early cash out when the Jags are 10-0. Let it
don't say
cook.
we didn't tell you.
Yeah, right. You heard it here first.
But what we'll do first, though, before we circle back to that sort of conversation about Philly and how the Jags could maybe follow at least some of that in 2025, we'll also get into a 3-round mock draft that came out for the 2025 selection process coming up a little bit later as well. But Liam Coen has announced his first coaching staff as head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't know about you, Ev. These staffs are so large to begin with that
Yeah.
the names I sort of just get lost in the sauce when I go down this, and I'll pull it up here on the screen for us. Um, obviously Liam Cohen there at the top, Grant Udinski, interesting because I guess as much as anything, Ev, as an overview, youth
Yeah, for
certainly
sure.
stands out for this coaching staff. I know Ron Rivera, it was talked about a lot that he could possibly be in this mix as a sort of assistant head coach. That did not happen. Ron going back to his alma mater of Cal. But just your initial thoughts. Where do you look? I mean, we talked about this on the last show. Defensive coordinator, because of Cohen's offensive background, that to me was the central focus of how this would unfold with this staff.
Yeah, I mean, I am not surprised at all that Cohen went really young. I think the average age for the staff is like 41.
Yeah.
When you consider that, you do have some the few veteran options you have there. I mean, Udinski's 29, right? I mean, he's not even 30.
Right.
Um, I like it overall. We've talked about the need for culture, so that is where a big question mark is still going to remain because when you've got younger guys, you don't really know their background in that sense. Like you don't know, like, oh, well, this guy's personality is known for driving players to whatever. What we know about Grant Udinski and Campanelli, really, the coordinators, is that they are well respected and they're also fairly, I would say, adventurous with their approach. Udinski, obviously coming from the Vikings, we absolutely love what we saw with Sam Darnold in that regard and what they were able to do. I like kind of the number one thing for Campanelli with me is that he doesn't commit to a 4-3 or 3-4. He is a multiple kind of guy. He's going to put out he's going to adjust to the situation. I don't mind that one bit. I really think that most NFL defenses already do that. If a guy says he's a 4-3 guy, that doesn't mean that they don't
Yeah.
do any 3-4. But I very much appreciate I guess the openness to just running out, a defense that will best fit the personnel rather than trying to shove personnel into a fit.
Yeah, you would think it would go without saying since this is, the National Football League, but I think something that Campanelli said that probably resonated very nicely with Jaguar fans is that we're going to get the best players on the field in situations when they need to be on the field
Exactly.
together, which again, that should go without saying, but after what we saw from the Jags defensively in 2024, there was some reaffirmation I think needed there. Now Heath Farwell's coming back as a special teams coordinator. Had a couple of Pro Bowlers from his group with the Jags a year ago, and again, there are some names that stand out for you here. I think Chad Morton as a running backs coach is a very respected guy around the league. I'm very happy to see Edgar Bennett, a Jacksonville native, on this
Yeah.
staff as the wide receivers coach. I think respect is another word that has been associated with Edgar Bennett going back to his days as a high school football player here in Duval back in the mid 1980s when your old man played high school football here in Duval. Edgar Bennett was a running back at what is now Riverside High School, was Lee High School. He learned from the legendary Corky Rogers. So you like sort of where he comes from and what he has
Absolutely.
evolved into as a coach. I think offensive line, though, kind of like defensive coordinator. And Sean Sarrett, we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah.
Sean Sarrett. So that's a hire that you kind of turn your eyes to. And then, otherwise, again, uh, important hires. I'm not undervaluing the importance of putting together a staff because it can absolutely make or break certainly a young head coach like Liam Coen. But again, I sort of move to the hot button areas of the football team when I really start to look at some of these guys.
Yeah, and I mean, again, when you go for a young staff, there's just not going to be as much prominence, and I'm feeling certain that Cohen is essentially saying I'm going to get my generation's dudes, the guys that are available. I want guys that are around my age, guys that I'm kind of coming up in the ranks with, and we're going to give them a chance. Which what the Jaguars have kind of leaned into. Proven experience with, basically the last two staffs. I mean, I guess Urban Meyer doesn't really count as proven at the NFL level, but going for winners and going for, whatever, I'm down to take a different approach because, as we've seen with some of these guys that have come up and done really well, whether it's Kevin O'Connell or whatever, these are young guys that, got their chance as an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, took it, became a head coach, and are finding success. I'm definitely down for this because really the previous formula wasn't working, so might as well try something new. Um, I will say that on top of that, we also had roster moves today. I'm
Yeah.
curious how this front office is doing all this without a general manager, but whatever.
Ethan
Uh,
Waugh. Ethan
y-
Waugh is your acting general
yeah,
manager,
yeah, yeah.
interim general manager. And actually, I think there's general manager interviews this week.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
they have I think now 2.5 weeks to
Yeah.
get a hire done. So it has to be done by like February 27th, I think.
I think
So
it'll probably go down before that. I'd be
yeah, it must.
surprised if
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
wouldn't. Um, obviously there's been a handful of candidates that have been bandied about, but you're right. You're already doing futures contracts and things like that with some guys I saw anyway today. Look like some familiar names, Josh
Oh yeah.
Cephas and some of those guys.
Christian Braswell,
Yeah. Yeah.
Trammell.
Yeah. Austin Trammell, guys that we saw either in camp last August or then even into the season in 2024. So, certainly some interesting aspects. I think also in terms of support staff, you're kind of wondering how that's going to play out. Strength and conditioning. Do you keep that intact? Do you move on from that?
Yeah,
Rebuild in that area too? Because we've heard the emphasis from Liam Coen, Campanelli, these kind of guys, physicality, toughness, and that's where a lot of that starts. That's where a lot of that comes from in terms of bridging the offseason into the actual season and the people that are truly impactful with the players on a day-to-day basis moving forward in these next few months. So what about it, Ev? This Philly blueprint, maybe, that you could certainly look at the Jags and say, you know what, Liam Cohen, he's going to try to run the football, right?
yeah,
They're going to
absolutely.
run the football. This isn't to really get into personnel for personnel because I don't think the Jags right now, starting with the offensive
Yeah,
line, can line up with the Eagles. And again, not just because of tackle to tackle, but Stoutland being as good as he is in working with that group too. We'll see. Um, but just in terms of approach and making the run game a far more central part of this thing, I've said it going back to last season. I think Trevor, like a lot of quarterbacks, desperately needs that to be in play for
yeah,
him to be as good and as effective as he can be. I thought last night was an example of that. Again, Jalen was great. Jalen deserves all the accolades that he's getting. The trip to Disney World today, all those things. Jalen Hurts very deserving, but a lot of that stems from what Philly had done over the course of the season with that offensive line and that run game and then you sort of pick your poison. Now, look, Trevor's not going to run the football like Jalen did last
No.
night. Jalen broke KC with some of those runs. Um,
Yeah.
but as far as an identity offensively, and starting with that run game and understanding Jacksonville does not have a Saquon Barkley, I think if you're a Jags fan, you were maybe encouraged to see what the Eagles did last night.
Well, yeah, and I think too that the thing that you would want to see in Jacksonville that the Eagles were able to do, and it's not because of established success in the game, but it's by respect that you have to go into the game with, which is the Eagles didn't run the ball especially well in the first half at
Mm-mm.
all, but like Saquon couldn't really get going. Jalen Hurts had a couple tucks that did pretty well, but even then he wasn't tucking it overly often, but you had to respect it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was opening up, stuff, not just on the short stuff, but like medium range downfield, hitting AJ Brown on those back shoulder throws. We've seen Trevor do that. Trevor has got a really great back shoulder throw. I want to see that all the time. I think really the challenge is going to be is figuring out how you get these two running backs in Jacksonville to kind of, you know, earn that respect. Where, with Travis Etienne, we're kind of down on him at the moment. We don't really believe that he can be kind of a day, every down back. Obviously, I don't think he can. But can take Bixby do that? Can you provide the kind of physicality required, especially on the interior of the offensive line, to be able to do that? That's going to be the main issue. Is kind of establishing that, because it's not just enough to break off, a few big runs a game like the Jags were able to do this past season. It was awesome to see Tank Bixby go for 50 yards every now and again. You have to be a team that gets 4 to 5 every touch or almost every touch. And, how do you do that? Well, I think it does unfortunately start with how do you improve the personnel. I know we're not trying to talk about that compared to the Eagles, but that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I mean, with the Jags, it's interesting with that offensive line because we talk about it in terms of, well, they're good at tackles. Walker Little, Anton Harrison. Are they good at tackle? I mean, they have their guys, it looks like,
Yeah.
or at least the guys the previous regime was committed to at tackle. But who knows what Liam Coen and Udinski think about the situation at offensive tackle that they're inheriting. I mean, you just signed um, Walker to that extension, so
You're
he
obviously
figures to be a
committed.
part of it no matter what. But then we seem to talk more about guard to guard, but with the Jags, it's more of a what do we really know from tackle to tackle
Yeah.
moving into 2025?
No, I mean, and the reality is not much. There's that, I do feel like that, offensive lines are maybe the number one group in the NFL that a change in staff and approach does actually like cause overachievement or
Mhm.
underachievement. I mean, I think it's definitely a group where, you can have quote unquote just guys and then take them and be able to, do something with it. The problem with the Jaguars is that they have some promising talent, but they also have some guys that I don't I'm curious what the upgrade will even look like for some of this group. And also who's going to win these position battles. We joked about Luke Fortner getting a huge bump. Is it Luke Fortner's time again? I mean, it's and even if it is, like, how confident do you feel?
Yeah.
What's his ceiling like? Um, so yeah, it's gonna be a major talking point. I mean, that is probably the area where you're most like, when you talk about comparing the Jags to the Eagles, where you're like, oh, geez, how do you even get there? Because this Eagles offensive line group is insane. Like, I mean, it's so
But
good.
look, there's reclamation projects on that
Becky
offense.
Becton,
I
yeah,
mean, Mekhi Becton, that dude was headed out of the league. I
jeez.
mean, he had bust written all over him, but he was a tackle coming into the
Even
league.
Cam Jurgens is kind of a guy that is taking a step forward.
They moved Becton inside to guard. You got Landon Dickerson. You are massive at the guard
Yeah,
positions with
yeah,
those two guys. But you got Jeff Stoutland. If there was
yep,
one offensive line coach that I feel like could have done with Becton what has been done, it was Jeff Stoutland.
yeah.
Um, so we'll see how that works too. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see exactly. I just want an identity. Just give me a
Yeah,
damn identity because the Jags, especially last season, even when Trevor was good, week to week, you didn't know what the hell they were going to come out with.
yeah,
I mean, and
but
nothing really played into the other as far as play calling or who they
right,
were. It wasn't complimentary at all. It wasn't okay. We're going to run outside zone to uh, Tank or Travis, and then we're gonna have the quarterback keep it, do things like that. It really wasn't. It was disjointed in a
yeah,
lot of ways. It was just random, I guess, is the best way to sort of talk about it in terms of who they were and what they were trying to be on the offensive side of the ball. But as far as playmakers go, you're right. I think that gets overlooked a little bit with Philly when you got AJ Brown
and
and
Devontae
Devontae
Smith.
Smith showed you again last night. And they were good enough at the tight end position that they could hurt you in that
Their
area too.
situation at tight end actually does remind me of the Jaguars.
Yeah,
I mean, the Jaguars arguably have a better tight end group. Like
yeah,
honestly, your top two guys in Philadelphia. I mean, no disrespect to Dallas Goddard, he's definitely a very good tight end. But I mean, I'd love to have. I mean, Evan Ingram and Brenton Strange compared to Goddard and Calcaterra. Like, I mean, I would say those are at least on the same power level. Um, so I mean, I think you could do what they do already. Something I was going to add too is that I know Trevor's not going to run the ball a lot, and I don't want him to, but I do
yeah.
want
It's
him to
not
run
his
it 3 or
game,
4 times a game.
right?
I do want Trevor to tuck it a few times on some read options and stuff. And you know what? I think Cohen might be telling Trevor, "Hey, you got to do it," because go look at Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is definitely more of a runner, but that the aspect of keeping it, that dynamic that it adds to the offense. You don't need to do it all the time. You don't need to do it 8 times a game, but if you can give a little bit of a stutter, a little bit of hesitation to a defensive line because they can't sell out. They can't
Yeah,
sell out going one way. They could get got going the other way. I really think that helps your offensive line too. It gives them just a little bit more breathing room. I think that's something that, whether Trevor likes it or not, I think Cohen might actually be like, hey, dude, I'm expecting you to tuck it 3 to 4 times a game,
yeah.
and I
You're
think that would be good. But
yeah,
again, that's more of a detail than it is a focal point. Like when you talk about an identity, tucking it 3 or 4 times a day game isn't the identity. It's something that you do to help the identity, I guess.
yeah. I guess with Evan Ingram, it's just interesting to see what his future is
Yeah.
with
Whereas,
the
yeah,
Jaguars because I think as it sits right now, his base salary for 2025 is $14.75 million.
expensive.
I got to think something's got to happen there
Yeah.
in terms of revisiting and seeing about keeping him as a part of
You could
things.
sign an extension and make it
Yeah,
like a
r-
2 year, ten
redo
million
the
type
deal.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. And by the way, we're gonna get into that 3 round mock coming up, but some interesting discussion as it relates to what
The
a
roster.
lot of teams are talking about today around the NFL. Hey, can
How
we
do
do
we
what?
do it?
How we do what Philly's doing? Well, we kind of gave
Also,
you
I
some
don't know if
reasons
the
why
Jaguars can
Philly can
find
do
a
what Philly's doing. What's
I don't
that?
know if the Jaguars can find a Jalen Carter,
Oh, jeez.
or a
And
Quinn
you're right.
Robinson.
It's not just one side of the ball. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, and also Cooper DeJean,
Yeah.
I mean, an absolute slam dunk, first round pick. I mean, that's what's funny too is they've reclaimed maybe more on the defense than they did on the offense because Darius Slay kind of felt like
Right.
his best years were past him. He played really well. C.J. Gardner Johnson's in that situation.
Yep.
Um, Josh Sweat, like these are guys that you were like, oh, they're fine,
They go out and
but
sign Bond, the linebacker, is a special
yeah,
teamer, basically a career
yeah.
special teamer. He's a damn all pro at linebacker this year. I mean, he
He
was
was
the dude. I mean,
last night, especially.
they didn't even have N'Kobe Dean last night. Think
Yeah,
about that.
it's
You know,
insane. I mean, they've got
crazy.
yeah, they had 5 dudes on IR coming into the playoffs, which is crazy,
Yeah,
on the defensive side of the ball.
you're
So,
right though. You got to have those war daddies on the defensive side. That's where with Campanelli, the comments about best players on the field together. You're hoping that if Eric Armstead's a part of that,
yeah,
you know,
talk about a reclamation project. There's one for
NFL Man of the Year, though. Congratulations to Eric
no, that
Armstead
is
on that.
awesome, and he's
Guy that
clearly a great
does
person. Like I do
he and
not
his
want to.
wife in a short period of time here in Duval have knocked it out of the park in the
Yeah,
community. Just killed it.
it
Yeah,
was it's definitely an
very
awesome
cool.
thing. Definitely, never ever gonna shade him on that. And who knows? Maybe it was really a coaching thing.
Yep.
Maybe it really was an approach. We had plenty of issues with the approach and rotations and all that stuff. So maybe he can get in rhythm with Campanelli. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, let's get into you want to get into a 3-round mock that just
Yeah, let's do
dropped,
it.
I think today. It's never too early, right? For the old
Oh no, dude,
mocks.
it's time.
So
It's mock
yeah, I mean,
season.
what are you talking about? It's late. I mean, we're late to this thing,
Yeah,
right?
we're
Um,
2 months away from the draft. Less than.
So Chad Reuter of NFL.com dropped his 3-round mock. I think he dropped it today. Why not? Yeah, he dropped it actually just this afternoon as we record this on a Monday.
Breaking news. Breaking
Monday
knowledge.
early evening. Yeah, breaking news. Chad Reuter. He's got the Titans. Speaking of the AFC South, going Cam Ward with that number
Yeah.
one overall pick.
I like Cam Ward a lot personally. So
I do too. I like him better than Shadur in terms of
yeah.
upside.
Yeah, if you're gonna pick one guy at the
Yeah.
top, I think that's the dude.
hmm
But
Reuter in that number 5 pick overall, he has the Jacksonville Jaguars going to Michigan, but it's not for Mason Graham. It is for Will Johnson, the corner who has had some injury issues. There's concerns about even before that. Is he going to run sub 4.5? He has the length and the size you certainly want. Could maybe give you, another Tyson Campbell type there at the cornerback position. But what do you think, Ev? What do you think of that pick there in the 5th spot for the
you know
Jags
what
Will
it
Johnson?
screams to me? It screams bulky.
Yeah.
um, I hate to say that, but a guy dealing with injury issues,
Yeah.
clearly talented, physically, athletically, one of the most elite prospects in this
Yeah.
draft. Everything screams bulky about it. So that's why it kind of doesn't taste good in my mouth thinking
Yeah.
about it. But Will Johnson, when he has been healthy, has been, I mean, a preeminent, DB in college football. I mean, he was a big part of that natty season. And it was playing well before his injury this year. I mean, I'd definitely be cool with it. Um, I do think that in that situation, between Jarian Jones and him, that's a pretty inexperienced duo as kind of like two of your three key pieces in the as corners. And I mean, in the modern NFL, you're going to have three corners out there all the time. You're going to be in nickel all the time. I would be curious to see how that would work. I think it's a gamble. I think that could either be a major success or a major flop. Um, I like Will Johnson though. I would not be mad about the pick. What about you?
Yeah, I think I can see it. If you can really sell yourself on a corner in that spot, it'd be hard to say no because you do have that void, obviously.
Yeah,
I think some would argue that Tyson Campbell hadn't exactly always been the guy you had hoped for, even with the extension and the new money that he has received on the other side. But when he's really right, he can perform at the highest level. What's interesting to me and watching the Eagles and the Chiefs sort of underscored this. We talk so much about coverage, right, with these corners, and you should. I mean, that's where it starts. That's what you're looking at primarily with these guys. But man, the Chiefs and the Eagles corners, forget about just safeties and nickels and guys
yeah,
like that. Their corners are physical. Like
yep,
they come up against the run or the quick game. And I think that's where I like Johnson maybe more than anything is that I feel like physically he can hold up as that sort of force defender. Whereas I love Buster Brown, but he's just not that guy
no,
physically out there. I think Tyson Campbell has come along in that regard too. I do like that about Tyson. So I would feel comfortable from that standpoint. But again, your point's a good one about the uncertainties and where you're taking this guy. You're taking him 5, right? You're
yeah,
not taking him 25 or 35 or 45. That's a lofty slot to maybe have to gamble a little bit and have to worry about the big picture future of a guy from an
Yeah,
availability perspective. It's one thing to maybe overreach and a player not live up to the potential you had hoped, but at least they were available,
right.
and we're able to prove that over the course of time. Let's go to round two for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Chad Reuter of NFL.com, number 36 overall, Evan. He has the
Xavier
Jaguars
Watts.
going safety for Xavier Watts. What about that?
Secondary getting, a lot of new blood in this mock draft. Um,
Chad ain't Chad ain't
I think it
wrong
makes plenty
though.
of sense. They
Yeah.
need it. Xavier Watts is a really exciting player. I mean, he was a big part of Notre Dame's kind of push there. I think he would. I almost feel like that he would be a more certain starter, like a jump in starter,
Mhm.
than Will Johnson, just because the safety play is so bad. That's not a necessarily a diss at Will Johnson, but I just feel like Watts is the type of player, kind of this again physical safety that can read the game really well. I feel like he'd be able to hop in there right away. Again, though, if you went double, DB to open the draft with the intent of them starting, that is again like that's a massive gamble. And it also something I was thinking about with both of these guys is I need to do research on if Campanelli's a man or zone leaning guy. Which type of coverage does he lean into more? If he leans into man more, I think both these picks make a ton of sense. If he's more of a zone guy, I don't know how I feel about these, but I need to do the research on that first.
Yeah, we talked about this before the show. Is Watts Kyle Hamilton like? Because the sort of auto default comp would be another guy from Notre Dame, like Kyle Hamilton, or is he maybe more like Xavier McKinney if we want to stick with the Xavier
Yeah.
comps, who Campanelli has experience with, having worked at least around this past season there in Green Bay. So, some interesting things to consider there, as you said, if the Jags do go double DB to start the 2025 NFL draft. What about round three here? I like this pick, especially with the perhaps uncertainty with Evan Ingram. Mason Taylor, son of NFL Hall of Famer Jason Taylor, former Miami Dolphin great. Mason, a tight end from LSU, has a little Brenton Strange, I guess, to it, you could say. Although I think Taylor, as a receiver coming into the league, might be a little more advanced than even Strange was.
Yeah, I like Mason Taylor a lot. I kind of get Dalton Schultz vibes from Mason Taylor a
Okay.
little bit, like a guy that is one physically going to be really really tough to match up on when he is out running routes, and then also clearly has like a pretty high level of blocking at this point in his career. Um, I like the idea of if especially if you're not going to run with Evan Ingram, I like the idea of just getting physical with tight ends because
Yeah.
again, Eagles blueprint. Those two tight ends they got. Those are physical dudes
They will
that
block
are
you.
massive, like they've got to be 6'5", they've got to be whatever. I kind of like the idea of getting out of a tween situation with Evan Ingram and getting into Mason Taylor, or screw it. Just make Evan Ingram a receiver at this point. Don't even bother with lining him up in a 3-point stance. Commit to Brenton Strange and Mason Taylor is kind of your key running formation, running situation tight ends, and just make Evan Ingram a guy who you're trying to get the ball. I don't mind that. And there's the Dallas Goddard comparison by Lance Zierlein.
Yeah,
So
right
yeah, I
there.
mean, overall, I like this dude a lot.
Yeah, I like him. I think Mason Taylor's a 10-year pro.
Yeah.
Health obviously being the big part of all that, but just watching this guy at LSU, and hey, Jags they've liked him some LSU, right? The
Oh
last
yeah,
couple
they
of
keep
years. A
going
lot of
back to that well.
Yeah, a lot of teams have liked LSU. So there you have Mason Taylor as the first of two third round selections for the Jacksonville Jaguars, according to Chad Reuters of NFL.com. And coming up a little bit later in that third round, here's one for you. I know we got a kick out of this. Let me see here. I'm
I think
scrolling,
it's
scrolling, scrolling.
even below where
Uh,
we got.
yeah, I got to go below the fold.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
they get
ads.
you. The
There it
ads
is.
get me here at NFL.com. How about with the 88th pick and in the third round? The Jaguars select Trevor Etienne. Rim shot. Insert it here for Chad with this pick. With Trevor maybe joining Travis, or is Chad saying Travis might be moving on and Trevor is the replacement potentially here in the third round, Ev?
Yeah, I feel I don't really know what to say about this pick. I feel like it. Chad Ritter, as someone who's read this dude's mock drafts for a long time, overall, I actually like his stuff. I don't think he does much like sensational stuff. I think that this one is just like, this one might grab some eyeballs. It gets some people talking. I don't see why you would draft Trevor Etienne in this spot. I also don't think that the brotherly love here to get
Yeah.
Philly again with it is really important at all. Um, and where Travis Etienne's stock is with the Jags right now, I don't. I mean, I know that the NFL doesn't work off of. Well, we're not going to draft a guy when we're about to cut his brother, but I still don't think. I just don't think this makes any sense. I really don't have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, well, Chad, a few picks later, he has actually a pick later. He has the
He did.
Dolphins taking a left-handed quarterback from Hawaii
Yeah.
and Dylan Gabriel. So
Yeah.
it sort of reeks of cute, some of these picks.
Yo, I actually love the Kyle McCord to the Rams pick though.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
actually has legs to me. I could see that working if I
yeah.
was
Put him with
if
McVay out there
dude,
because
McVay, Stafford teaching Kyle McCord, that makes a
who
lot of
knows though?
sense to me.
Is Stafford still going to be in LA? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
going to be interesting coming up here in the next
No, but no,
little
in
bit.
the third round, in the first round, you have to maintain credibility as a mock drafter. You have to do
Right?
stuff that makes sense. You can't do
Yeah,
anything crazy. But when you get to the third round, you just start,
yeah.
let's get fun with it. And I feel like maybe that's what Chad is doing.
I really don't have a problem with the Jags going running back in the third round.
I don't,
But
yeah, it's the running back's not the issue.
if you're gonna tell me Montreal Johnson is maybe still around, the
Yeah,
Florida running back, or Trevor Etienne, I'm taking Montreal Johnson every day of the week.
absolutely.
Now, I haven't looked at every pick that Chad has up here. Maybe he has Montreal Johnson going ahead. I would
Yeah,
think he does, but boy, if you had a Montreal Johnson even earlier in this third round, I wouldn't mind the Jags going there for a legit back. Now, look, Travis Etienne, this who knows? Maybe this turns out to be a situation almost similar to Saquon Barkley's, in that Saquon was kind of disrespected a little bit
yeah,
going into last season. Certainly, the Giants felt like he was expendable, and then he has the huge year. I don't know if Travis has that in him. I
yeah,
don't think they're the same kinds of back either. I don't think Travis at this point or is really a 20 carry guy. So there's some blanks you got to fill in there as far as your expectations, I think. But boy, if you can get a Montreal Johnson type to me, even in the third round, I'd be okay with that. So what do you think, Ev? What do you think of those picks? Couple on offense, couple on defense there in the first three rounds.
I mean, I think I would be happy with it. I think Jaguars fans need to already get ready for what some might consider a boring draft in the first year of a new staff with a GM that hasn't even been hired yet. I don't think that they're going to be, rolling a whole lot of dice out the gate. I think they're just going to add to the positions of need, which this mock does that for the most part. You could say tight end is maybe not something you need to address in the
Yeah.
third round, but with a spot like that, with Mason Taylor, that we like it. We like it a lot. So,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
I think I'd be happy with this. I'd be okay with this. Um, I the only concern would be, yeah, like especially with Campbell, just the injury health history. I am tired of
Right.
taking gambles on guys like that. So that's really the only yellow or red flag for me. But otherwise, I'd be fine with it. Even Trevor Etienne, I'd be okay with. Would I prefer, like you said, somebody else, maybe even like Travion Henderson if he fell that far? I would love
Hmm.
that. I think his kind of profile maybe actually fits better with what the Jags don't have in that running back group.
Hmm.
But, yeah,
Dylan Sampson,
Dylan Sampson be cool.
Tennessee.
That would be cool. We
Wouldn't
saw
have a
him tear
problem
up
with him.
Alabama. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we know what he can do, but
And he's shown he can handle some
some,
carries. Now,
yes,
he
some
had some
workload.
ball security issues. I didn't like that maybe as
Yeah.
much with him, but yeah, just some guys to consider there
Some
with the running
guys.
back, some guys. Hey, Ev, it's been a lot of fun, man. Good
Yeah,
catching back up and getting into all things Jaguars. Going to be a
absolutely.
fascinating stretch of days and weeks to come. The Jags, right now, really in draft process mode, as you might expect. Now, the general manager hire is certainly going to be big, as we outlined earlier in the program, in these next few weeks. But there's kind of in the middle of evaluations and scouts, and they're piled into meetings on a daily basis right
Yeah.
now with the initial sort of sifting through of guys at every position for this upcoming draft. So plenty of stuff going on down there at the Miller Electric facility, but we'll try to keep you up to speed as best we can right here on No Sleep Teal. Anything else, Ev, before we get out of here?
No, yeah, just hoping we have a GM by the next episode. That'd be cool.
I hear
If,
you.
when we record next week, if we know exactly who's going to be. If it goes any longer than that, that's when you start to say, man, this dude's going to have a month basically before the draft and 2 weeks before free agency opens.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that, like you said, Ethan and the rest of the crew are working on it. It's not like nothing's happening, but still, you
right.
got to get that done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, they're kind of riding with, the group that they've had, sans Trent Baalke, and then trying to get through this process. And obviously the new GM will come in and have some say as well. But fluid the situation
Oh
right
yeah.
now when it comes to the personnel department there with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, Ev, we'll do it again real soon right here on Reier on YouTube. We thank you for joining us right here on the program. If you haven't subscribed to Reier on YouTube, we hope you'll go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on that notification bell so you'll be alerted to all of our content as it drops here on the channel. And a thumbs up. There you go. It's always appreciated also. For Ev, I'm Travis. Thanks for tuning in to No Sleep Till. Until next time, so long, everybody.